Farmers' responsibility is to feed over 8 billion people across the globe. And in an ever-changing world, this is not an easy task. Hello and welcome, I'm Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. The marriage between tech and tradition is what farmers need across the globe. Tech shows us ways to deal with new challenges in a world where everything is changing, the environment, weather patterns and even economies. While traditional knowledge and varieties show us how to withstand these challenges. And speaking of modern agri-tech, let's head to the northern state of Haryana, where a tech solution is really helping the farmers. Drones are now monitoring plant growth and also detecting diseases and pest infestations. These drones have made the application of fertilizers and pesticides far more efficient, while also protecting the soil health. Farmers are reaping economic benefits, but here in this case, this technology also has a social impact.
Morni is the only hilly region in Haryana state, and it's where Ambika Rana lives. Her days begin early so she can finish her chores in the morning. And then she heads to a cosmetic store that she runs, which also doubles up as the village drone center. Ambika is the only woman in the district who is authorized to fly a drone. The villagers now call her Drone Didi or Drone Sister. This happened because of a self-help group. Ambika is one of more than 10,000 women across rural India who are being trained as drone pilots for the farming sector. The central government initiative was launched in March 2024. The program is being hailed as revolutionary, and women are at the forefront. Today, Ambika is visiting a wheat field where daily wage laborers normally carry out the tasks that her drone will take over. These can include monitoring the fields, spraying pesticides and sometimes sowing seeds. She charges up to 200 rupees or the equivalent of 3 euros per acre. It's very difficult to work in the mountains. I have 4.5 acres of farmland and it's tough for even 2 people to manage the spraying together. Virender has booked a slot with Ambika today to test the drone for spraying pesticides. Since the program is still in the pilot phase, the service is being offered to anyone who might be interested in trying it. I have 4.5 acres of wheat. How much time will it take? 1 acre will take 15 to 20 minutes to spray. Based on the size of the farm, it would take 90 minutes for all 4.5 acres. If we had done it manually, it would have taken an entire day. I would have lost 5 or 6 hours. Currently, the costs of training, fertilizers and drones are being covered by some of the largest fertilizer manufacturers in the country. And not everybody is happy with the development, including Professor Vinod Kumar Chowdhury from Punjab University. He believes the program will increase the dependency on chemicals in the region, which is harmful for the land and its people. These drones will mostly be used to spray pesticides and fungicides, which are harmful to health. Earlier, when farmers used a tractor or a tank for spraying, they could spray under the plants. But drones will cover the entire area from above, so they'll miss the pests that tend to be hiding under the leaves. That means the chance the pests will be eliminated will decrease, and the use of pesticides will continue to increase. Then, if you decrease the amount of chemicals, there will suddenly be an explosion of the pest population. According to Dr. Chowdhury, the increased dependency on chemical fertilizers and pesticides will inevitably work against the interests of the farmers, while generating more profits for manufacturing companies. Gradually, farmers will realize their overall costs are increasing. There's very little chance of something like this benefiting the farmers in the long run. The only beneficiaries will be the companies. It would have been better if drones were used to spray organic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers could help reduce the environmental and health impact, but there are still open questions. Who would pay for those fertilizers? Would there be enough for all the farmers who need them? In any case, the drone program has already had some positive social impact. Some people in society look negatively at a woman if she steps outside of her home. They don't even care what kind of work she's doing. But since I've received the drone, the negative attitude of people has turned much more positive. Self-help groups like these plan to train more women and help empower them. If the impact on health, the environment, and on jobs is addressed, this program could be a huge support to the people who do the hard work of farming in India.
A lot of our problems are now solved digitally. From teachers and doctors to even yoga instructors, a lot of them are available online. What if farmers could do the same with the issues that they face on their fields and with their crops? In an agrarian economy like India, which has over 820 million active internet users, half of whom are from rural areas, this could be a great idea.
If a plant in the field looks unhealthy, these farmers pull out their phones, take a picture and find out right away whether the plant is diseased. The app analyses the photo and, if needed, provides help with treatment.
Plantix is like a crop doctor. It plays the same role in my life as my personal doctor does. It identifies crop diseases, suggests treatment, and prescribes medicine and treatment options.
Taking a smartphone into the field alongside a hoe and shovel has become part of everyday life for Indian farmers. The potential of digital tools in agriculture in India is huge. Almost half of the population works in the agricultural sector. It's very difficult for people to correctly identify a disease with the naked eye. The app can do this within seconds, directly in the field. But how exactly does it work?
Using the app is very easy. First, open Plantix on your Android phone. Next, you have to take a picture.
We are taking picture of particular.
After snapping the photo, it needs to be uploaded. The app first identifies the crop.
Photo upload हो रहा है. पहले crop detection होगा.
This data is then processed in Germany by Plantix, which is part of the Helm pharmaceutical company. The founders started out as students at the University of Hanover, experimenting with tomatoes.
This would then be sent to our servers, analyzed by a deep neural network, this is called. So it's basically a model that seeks the unique fingerprint of a certain disease or pest, and would then return a result.
So-called plant doctors help the image database to categorize pictures that it doesn't know. This is how the AI learns so that it can later make recommendations.
It is the symptoms to diagnose the disease. There's a yellowing of the leaves starting at the margins. The app says that there's no disease but a potassium deficiency.
Around 8 million farmers already use the Plantix app, almost exclusively in India. The app's image database contains 35 million pictures of different plant diseases, ensuring an accurate diagnosis.
Do you know 700 different crop problems on 30 different crops? Potentially not, because it's just too much to know. And it's also some kind of diagnostic that's tough for a human to do.
If a disease is detected, the app recommends the relevant pesticide to users and shows where it can be purchased. But local retailers don't always have all the products in store, which can lead to farmers buying the wrong items, or even fakes. This has consequences.
We estimate that roughly half of all products sold in India, and probably also in other countries in the world, are not suited to treat a problem. We try to make, first of all, the prescription correct, and secondly, help farmers to buy products that are from well-reputed organizations, where we know that that these are really good, helpful products.
Farmers report better harvests since using Plantix. Sandeep Shinder was at first reluctant to trust AI with his livelihood.
I didn't trust the app in the earlier months, but later, when I start taking pictures of the diseased crops, the app's smart features of suggesting the right treatment made me feel more confident.
उसका फोटो निकालो, फोटो निकलने के बाद तुरंत वो बताता है इसमें डिसीज कौन सा है.
AI won't replace farmers' know-how and experience anytime soon. Instead, artificial intelligence is a supplement that makes working in the fields just a little bit easier.
Be it technology or agricultural policies, farmers need all the support that they can get. In India, farmers have been protesting for weeks. Why? In a nutshell, the main reason is rapidly declining profits. And not just India, farmers across Europe have been protesting as well. The government's agri-policies need to align with the needs of farmers, because if a farmer can't operate sustainably and profitably, then our economies and our kitchens are both threatened.
Farmers are furious. Farmers have been demonstrating all over the continent, from Portugal to Latvia to Romania to France.
There are so many specific EU rules, and in the end, we can no longer produce at low prices.
Farming is our passion, and we want to be able to make a living.
Some issues are more localized. In France and Germany, the demos have focused on the reduction of diesel subsidies. Farmers in Greece are still reeling from floods in 2023 and are also demanding faster compensation for damage from natural disasters. In Hungary and Poland, farmers complain about imports of cheap grain from Ukraine. Since Russia's invasion, the EU has waived tariffs on Ukrainian grain and produce as a measure of support after Russia blocked major Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea. But whether it's diesel subsidies, flood damages, or grain imports, there's a common thread running through all the protests. Farmers feel left alone and overlooked by their governments. And if we look at the cold, hard numbers, this might well be true.
It's just a fact that over time, agriculture tends to shrink relative to other sectors of the economy.
Stefan von Kramon-Taubadel is an economist whose research analyzes agricultural policies. He's been a consultant to the World Bank and several national governments. This is because GDP growth becomes more and more concentrated on industrial goods, and especially services, over time. European farms are dying out, decreasing by roughly a third since 2005. Still, 8.7 million people worked in European agriculture in 2020, and that doesn't include seasonal workers, who often labor under precarious conditions. In Europe and the US, the farming population has shown elevated suicide rates.
Being a farmer is not only having the job as a farmer, but really giving all in.
Marie von Meyer-Höfer is an agricultural economist who researches the social side of sustainable food systems. Farmer suicide rates in India, the world's most populous nation, are dire. In 2022, at least 30 farmers took their own lives every day. And we can look again to the shrinking role of agriculture here.
Economically, it has swinged significantly. Now it is only around, say, 15% of the country's GDP.
Brajesh Jha is an agricultural economist at India's Institute for Economic Growth. Protesters gathering in the breadbasket northern state of Punjab want the government to guarantee a minimum price for all their crops. So whether it's India or Europe, farmers are struggling. They're losing relevance in our economic system, and it shows the ways in which the system is stacked against them.
The wealth across the value chain is not distributed in a fairly manner.
Ivan Ivanov is the political secretary of a federation that advocates for European farmers and farm workers.
Retailers and big food manufacturers are getting like the biggest share of the value which is produced in the agri-food sector, and farmers and farm workers, which are like in the bottom of this value chain.
In Europe, there's a pretty easy target for all that pent-up manure: the EU Commission in Brussels. Payments are calculated based solely on how big the farm is.
The linkage of the subsidies to the farmland is one of the biggest problems, because it gives the favor to the ways of production that we want to change.
This means the policy rewards industrial farms, which tend to be monocultural corporations. Most European farms are small, however. 2/3 are less than 5 hectares. And almost all of those are family farms with an aging population. As if all that weren't complex enough already, enter climate goals. Europe has lofty plans to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. Agriculture is responsible for more than 10% of total EU greenhouse gas emissions.
Relative to the size or the overall economic importance of the sector, it produces disproportionately a large share. of greenhouse gases.
So what did the European Commission do? Make a Green Deal. Along with the farm-to-fork strategy within it, this policy tries to make food systems more sustainable. And this is where we start running into tensions. Farmers have revolted against Green Deal policies, like phasing out diesel subsidies, reducing fertilizer and pesticide use, and setting aside land for biodiversity. They say the rules don't compensate them for the income loss, and that farmers are taking too big a share of the responsibility. So is there something about all of this that just isn't working?
A lot.
The problem with the policy is that it is a bit schizophrenic. If it's meant to be income support, then you think, you should be targeting smaller farms with low income more and not the big farms. The question is whether it's really designed to be income support in the first place.
Because if the purpose of the policy is for environmental welfare,
well then a big farm should be getting more payments because a big farm is affecting in the environment on a much larger number of hectares. So the main problem, at least from my perspective as a policy analysis, is that the policy it's not really clear what the main priority is. You're trying to pursue two different goals with one policy and with one tool, and that's not really effective.
So far, the European Commission has backpedaled on some of its policies because of the protests. France dropped its fuel subsidy cut, and the EU scrapped a plan to reduce pesticides. As for Ukraine, the European Commission will extend its trade support deal until 2025, but added a measure to prevent too many Ukrainian products being sold in EU states. But all of this might just be popping painkillers. For long-term solutions, a bigger shift in policy would be needed to help farmers and address climate change. One solution could be to focus the EU policies around the environmental aspects of the food system, not subsidies.
Income support is, in the European Union, a national policy priority. The social policies are national priorities. That shouldn't be coming from Brussels.
It would then be up to the individual member states to support their farmers. They would have more flexibility in shaping their subsidies, which could support smaller farms and create incentives and financial support for more ecological practices. Changing the food system, of course, implicates me, you, the consumer. Right now in the EU, the environmental cost simply isn't priced enough into our purchases. Raising those prices would be necessary and in turn change our consumption habits. For farmers in India, price controls look necessary given that roughly 50% of the country's workforce is in agriculture. In the long run,
they definitely deserve more subsidies from government.
Zooming out, maybe a healthy dose of reality is needed in thinking about climate change and the struggles of agriculture.
Agriculture is a sector that's probably never going to be completely climate neutral. That's just, but the nature of things. That said, we're talking about food, which is a necessity.
At the end of the day, farmers are the ones providing our food. Their anger is understandable.
Tech and AI have really made things simpler for farmers in many ways. But tech cannot predict or control everything, like several natural events, including volcanic eruptions that can have a major negative impact on agriculture. Let's take a journey back 200 years to a volcano that still fascinates scientists. A volcano which is surrounded by local fables of evil spirits and a curse.
From time to time, the volcano emits large plumes of steam and is still monitored. Today, Tambora on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa may be largely quiet, but in the year 1815, its eruption was so powerful it was heard 2,000 kilometers away. The eruption of 1815 deposited millions of cubic meters of volcanic material on Sumbawa Island.
It's believed 92,000 people died in all, 40,000 straight away.
Today we have this beautiful scenery, and we can see what happened in 1815 here. The eruption was the most powerful in recorded history, an event with dramatic consequences worldwide. Climate data confirms that global temperatures cooled by 1 to 2 degrees, with sunlight blocked out by particles released into the atmosphere.
Akibatnya suhu di bawah menjadi dingin.
Those aerosols have a cooling effect on the Earth. Crops fail. Many animals can't find enough food, and so on.
The energy released was equivalent to 6.5 million times that of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima, a disaster for many agrarian societies of the time. In parts of Asia, the monsoon rains were disrupted, leading to drought, while in Europe, the cold and rain destroyed crops and caused widespread famine, disease, and economic turmoil. The crisis made its mark on artists and writers. It's believed to have inspired Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, and paintings like this one by German artist Caspar David Friedrich, who captured the striking skies and the gloom that shrouded the earth. The unprecedented catastrophe fueled creativity across the continent. Indonesia is situated on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Mount Tambora on Sumbawa is just one of more than 100 active volcanoes there. This caldera is also a legacy of the 1815 eruption. Today, the area around Mount Tambora is a national park. It takes 2 days to reach the edge of the crater. For many people in Indonesia, volcanoes have spiritual significance. Swiss botanist Heinrich Zollinger witnessed that firsthand. In 1847, he climbed Tambora and penned the depiction of the eruption of the year 1815. In his pamphlet, he described how local people warned him against climbing the volcano.
Wherever you set foot, fire erupts from the ground, evil spirits inhabit the mountain, and those who want only to ascend in that region of hellish spirits are fated to suffer storms, tempests, and certain perdition.
The word Tambora comes from the word Mbora. Mbora means to disappear in Indonesian. With a ta in front of it, as in Tambora, it means inviting you to disappear. Let's disappear. Nowadays, people know a lot more about the eruption of the volcano than they did back then. Geologists, climate scientists, and even social scientists are all interested in the global effects of that huge natural disaster. In Europe, it led to a year without summer. In essence, the eruption cut Tambora in half.
Saya hanya mengutip dari pendapat.
A number of volcanologists believe or subscribe to the theory that the summit of Mount Tambora used to rise 4,000 meters above sea level. And because of the 1815 eruption, it was essentially cut in half, and what remains is only 2,800 meters above sea level.
800 sekian meter dari permukaan laut.
The night sky on our ascent was peaceful, nothing like the evening of April 5th, 1815, when the first pillar of fire illuminated the night. The inferno lasted 7 days. Mount Tambora is what is called a stratovolcano. It was formed in many geological layers and has a steep, narrow cone. So, could it erupt again one day? Over the past 20 years, the region has seen many periods of increased seismic activity, small tremors in the ground.
Out of 127 active volcanoes in Indonesia, almost 80% of them, between 70 and 80% of them, have an observatory station. We even have one volcano monitored by 3 observatory stations. Each station has a seismograph. They have seismographs and binoculars. They measure the wind direction and the temperature. They have thermocouple sensors to measure the temperature of fumaroles and solfataras and so forth.
But why was the impact of the gigantic eruption of 1815 so far-reaching?
When a volcanic eruption injects ash, dust, and gases into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, they form sulfate aerosols, which the Earth's rotation helps spread around the globe.
In 1847, when Heinrich Zollinger arrived back safely from his ascent, his return was seen as a good omen.
It was thought the curse had been lifted and the evil spirits banished. The hope was that the disaster of 1815 would never come again. The celebratory gunfire, exultations, and singing went on until dawn.
But in 1967, there was another eruption. It was much smaller, though, and didn't have the disastrous global impact that the one a century and a half earlier had.
Are there any such solutions that you are seeing around you? Do let us know. You can email us or reach out to me directly on my social media handles. I will see you next week. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Namaskar.